everyone, this is RedTechShoe and I have another Battleborn character review episode for you, and in this episode we're going to be looking at Shayne and Aurox. We're going to be looking at the dynamic duo from the Rogue faction. We're going to be going over their skill setup, their in-game lore and backstory, their Helix loadout, and I'm going to go over some tips and tricks that I have found to utilize their unique playstyle to generate as much chaos and advantages on the battlefield as possible. So let's get right into their skill setup, which is her first skill is called Stealth Strike. Shayne will go invisible for 5 seconds, and when either her invisibility cloak expires or you cancel out of it beforehand, Aurox comes crashing down and deals a minor 133 damage to the area around Shayne. Very minor damage, however, we will augment that to be more effective later. Now her other skill, Fetch, is much more useful. She will send Aurox forward, and the first enemy that Aurox runs into, Shayne will get pulled back and dropped off right in front of Shayne. This is good and bad, and I'll go over that later in the video, but for right now we're just going to leave it at that. Now her ultimate ability is called Tag Team. Shayne will point at an area, highlighted of course, and then once Shayne pulls the trigger and sends Aurox out there, Aurox will teleport to that area and deal a fiery explosion, and it will last for 5 seconds, dealing over 400 damage to all the enemies in that region. And once it expires, Aurox returns to Shayne and it knocks all the enemies nearby in the air. Fairly good ability, gives Shayne and Aurox some range, which I think is fairly good. Her inherent ability, her passive ability, is called Fleet-Footed. Whenever Aurox is disabled, meaning whenever Aurox and Shayne are technically separated from one another, Shayne will move 30% faster for 2 seconds. I wish that was for the entire time that Shayne and Aurox were separated and Aurox was disabled, but unfortunately it's not, so it is what it is. Her basic R2 attack is just literally several right hand and left hand swings that Shayne and Aurox do in unison together, so they're pretty much right, left, right, left. That's really all it is, nothing too special about that. However, Shayne's L2 attack is her boomerang. She will wind up her boomerang and throw it, and for every swing that she does forwards and backwards, she will throw a boomerang, and the boomerang can not only hit targets, but it can also ricochet off walls and other surfaces and deal and hit the enemies around corners and stuff like that. So it's very good, very useful with a good rate of fire. It definitely is excellent. You'll see me use it in the gameplay, and I really say I gotta like Shayne's boomerang. It's very, very useful. I grew to like it a lot. And that's really it for their skill setup. Now we're gonna move on to their in-game lore and backstory. So the first thing you should know about the relationship between Shayne and Aurox is that Aurox is what is known as a Guayota. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but it's whatever. And the Guayota are well known throughout the Detritus Ring, Sector 17 of the Detritus Ring, in the galaxy, and the LLC were actually contracted out by a third party to go exterminate these creatures, the Guayota, that are known to, they're creatures of energy that are capable of encasing themselves in nearby mineral matter. And they can also rapidly shift into a state of partially phased energy, from which they feed constantly on processed power sources like energy reactors, which makes them a threat to space colonies, because they could drain the colony of all its energy, and if that colony was needed power to produce breathable air, well, it's bad news for everyone in that colony then. So the Guayota were a problem, and the LLC went to exterminate them. However, they clearly missed one, and Aurox is now bound to Shayne. And Shayne was rescued by Reyna on Braxton 3, and Shayne seems to have control of Aurox. They're in a symbiotic relationship. It is apparently that Aurox is not stable the way he is in terms of like his form, and that there's a device that Shayne apparently possesses which is called a phase beacon, which is what allows Aurox to stay in place and not dissipate completely. So apparently Aurox was maybe hurt or injured, and in a desperate attempt to survive was bound himself to Shayne, and somehow Shayne now holds the key that keeps Aurox even, alive. So pretty much Shayne lets Aurox, latch onto him, and now Aurox, gives Shayne his power, and that's pretty much the relationship they have. However, the relationship is not a fun one. Aurox hates Shayne. He hates her with a passion. He wants nothing more than to rid himself of her and kill her. And given the chance, if he can kill her and find a way to survive afterwards, he probably will take that chance. So Shayne is their relationship is a love-hate relationship. You know, they're together only because Aurox needs Shayne to survive, and Shayne wants Aurox's power. But Aurox will not pass up the opportunity to kill Shayne if he's able to get the chance and find a way to live afterwards. So that's really all you need to know about their backstory, is that, you know, Aurox despises Shayne with a passion and one day hopes to kill her, you know, in bloody vengeance. And now we're going to move on to Shayne and Aurox's Helix loadout, and I'm going to show you how I've augmented them to be rather useful on the battlefield. Okay, so here we are with Shayne and Aurox's Helix loadout. Now, the first off, level 1 is actually up to you. Welcome Committee or Aura of Annoyance are both very good. They augment Fetch and Stealth Strike rather nicely. Stealth Strike is definitely capable of causing issues, and Welcome Committee giving you an overshield while you bring opponents near you, you know, is pretty good, because since you're bringing them right up to you, that means you're pretty much already, you know, prepared for a fight. So granting yourself an overshield is pretty good. And Stealth Strike is capable of just causing a minor nuisance and constantly pestering your opponents. So either one is up to you. Now for this one, I prefer to run with Wait for the Drop. When Aurox comes out of Stealth Strike, you hit your opponents with 3 seconds of slow. That is definitely very useful. You'll see me use it here a lot, especially when I'm chasing down an opponent or I want to prevent them from escaping. I'll immediately go into Stealth Strike and then immediately come out of it just to hit them with slow, so that I can keep them on the defensive and try and kill them a little bit sooner and prevent them from escaping. So I definitely prefer Wait for the Drop for level 2. Now for level 3, I definitely have leaned a little bit more towards the power of 2. Shayne and Aurox's melee attacks deal additional damage while their shield is active. That is pretty dang good, considering they have a starting overshield of 600. That is definitely useful. That means you'll get that attack bonus a little bit longer. If you don't have access to the power of 2, I would prefer Hulk out with your Jin out. You know, the recharge rate for their overshield is definitely useful. I never had a real use for Boomerang Bounce. It's not too bad, but I would definitely prefer the power of 2 and then Hulk out with your Jin out. Now for this one, for level 4, I go with Holding It Down. This gives our fetch ability Stun. That means Aurox, instead of pulling the opponent to us, will immediately grab onto them and stun them for 2 seconds, holding them in place and making it so that they can't move. Now this means that Aurox is also latched onto them for 2 seconds. So, and you'll notice sometimes it's a little difficult, like I can't really get at my opponents for those 2 seconds. So what I use Holding It Down for stunning, is either to escape or to position myself in an advantageous, you know, area on the map, so that it makes it harder for my opponents to escape or harder for them to kill me. You'll see me use it, especially towards the end of the video. You'll see me use Holding It Down to great advantage and just pin opponents in certain bad spots to the point where they have no chance of escaping. So for level 5, I have preferred Don't Stop Running or the Immortal Aegis. Either one is definitely good. I prefer the Immortal Aegis personally, just because at the conclusion of any skill, whether it be Stealth Strike or Fetch, their shield recharges, and especially since we are taking advantage of the power of 2, the more shield we have, the stronger our attacks get. So the Immortal Aegis is more preferable if you can take advantage of the shield. Next up, I go with Sneaky and Resilient. I'd rather take the damage reduction, just so that I can last a little bit longer. I don't care about Fetch's shield penetration, since Fetch doesn't do that much damage anyway. If it did a lot more damage, that would be worth it. You know, 60% shield penetration is pretty good. But since it doesn't do that much damage, I prefer Sneaky and Resilient any day. Now, for level 7, this is actually pretty fun. You can actually go with Bigger Badder Jin for increased shield strength, or you can go Boom Goes the Boomerang. You know, Shayne and Aurox is a boomerang. Since you can spam those things constantly, you know, that 18% damage increase can add up to a good chunk of damage, and your opponent's overshield can be gone, you know, in seconds with that. Or, you know, so if you don't have access to Boom Goes the Boomerang, bigger, better Shayne is definitely what I prefer to go to, you know, in all circumstances. Next, I go with Sustained Stealth. Increased stealth strike duration. It allows you to be more, you know, it allows you to flank better. Sorry, I was at a loss for words there. You're able to flank better because you're invisible for 11 seconds instead of just 5. Long Arm of the Lawless, not too bad. If it increased the area of effect radius and it increased the slowing effect, that would definitely be worth it. But because it doesn't, it only increases the radius, I'm not too big on it, and I prefer Sustained Stealth just so that I can either flank easier or get away easier. Either one is perfectly fine for me. For level 9, I would either go with Got 'em or Quiet Fetching. Reducing the cooldown of Fetch so I can use it more often to stun my opponents. You know, you can't complain about that. And Got 'em. Sometimes Aurox does travel a little bit slow, and it can be a little bit of an issue. But you know what? It's not too bad. Aurox doesn't travel too slow to begin with, so you don't really need Got 'em, unless, especially if you're at point-blank range, which you'll see me use several times. So Quiet Fetching is preferable in my opinion. And last but not least, I go with Aurox Beckons. When you activate Tag Team, Aurox will draw in all the enemies and it will cast Slow on them. You know that I like any status effects, Slow, Silence, or Blindness, you know, stunning them. I do like those. You know, when Aurox hungers, I don't really feel it all that much. Considering how we're using Tag Team for ranged attacks anyway, odds are I'm probably not in a position where my shield needs to recharge. So I don't really need to worry too much about that. So I prefer Aurox Beckons for level 10. And that's my whole Helix loadout for Shayne and Aurox. Now, one last thing I'd like to go over is when it comes to equipment loadout, like the 3 items that you can use to power up Shayne and Aurox with, when it comes to shards, there's really nothing that I really have to recommend. Shayne and Aurox, I think, can do good with a variety of things, whether they be crowd control items or things that increase attack speed or whatnot, or skill damage, you know, or skill cool. But I would strongly recommend something that reduces skill cooldowns, considering how your skills will be definitely useful to you. So something that reduces either the skill cooldowns or improves, you know, crowd control effects. I would definitely go with something along those lines. And for the last one, you can choose like basic attack speed if you want, or shield recovery. Either one is perfectly fine with me. But now when it comes to how to use Shayne and Aurox effectively on the battlefield, I have found that they are very good as disrupting your opponent's game plan. In terms of when they're fighting your opponents, you use Stealth Strike to sneak up on them and inflict slow status and create a hole in their front lines. Make it so that the guys that you hit with Stealth Strike need to retreat, or you use Fetch to pull one of them to you. And then in doing so, all your teammates now draw their attention to that one enemy that you've hit, and now they all try and kill him. So Shayne and Aurox are very good, not in terms of damage. It's not the damage of their skills, like kind of like what I do with Arendi. Arendi's skill damage is what I use her for, but when it comes to Shayne and Aurox, it's the effect, it's the status effects that they inflict, whether it's stunning your opponent for 2 seconds, or slowing or inflicting slow for 3 seconds, or pulling them across the map. Those are what I think make Shayne and Aurox stick out and allow them to be useful, not only for offensive purpose, for also defensive purposes. You can go use Stealth Strike to be invisible, or you can use Fetch and stun your opponent for 2 seconds to beat a hasty retreat. Either one is perfectly fine. Shayne and Aurox have good flexibility, and they're actually pretty fun to use once you don't try and go ham and try and lead the charge. If you're trying to run around and deal damage, and you're doing it lone wolf style and you're not playing with a full team, it can be a very frustrating experience for you. But once I started kind of hanging back and playing similar to Arendi and picking my spots and just looking to create holes in my enemy's defensive lineups, or create opportunities. That's where I think Shayne and Aurox excel at, is creating opportunities for me and my teammates to capitalize on and to unleash a whole lot of damage. So in these situations, you know, when you're looking at a majority of opponents, inflicting slow or stun on them right then and there, that is good. In one-on-one situations, Shayne and Aurox don't really do all that great on. but it's definitely, they're definitely good at holding their own for the most part, especially with a strong overshield and their ability to either stun or slow, and then retreat. I definitely strongly recommend that you use the status effects of their skills to your best advantage, because that's really what sets them apart. I can't begin to tell you just how many battles I've won and how many assists I've gotten just from stunning an opponent or grabbing them with fetch and then bringing them across the map. And when they try and run away, they have to avoid fighting altogether while they're taking damage from me and another teammate. It's very fun to play Shayne and Aurox as a disruptor, as someone who is a constant pain in the ass to them, because they know that when I'm on the scene, I'm probably going to do something that's going to really be, very irritating for one person in particular. So, I mean, like right here, when there's a lot of chaos, inflict slow, and just go all out on that guy, on these enemies. This is where Shayne and Aurox excel at. And as you can see right here, me and my teammates, we're just going to steamroll these guys. We're already going to win. The score is nowhere close. They're nowhere near capable of pulling a comeback. And at this point, it's just an all-out bum rush and melee beatdown. And me and Atticus are just going to team up, and we're just going to gang up on these enemies, and they're not going to stand chances with the two of us wailing on them. And that's one of the best things that Aurox can do, is he can pin enemies in bad situations and make it so that there's no escape. I mean, what we just did to Thorn right there, that was just flat out unfair, because Thorn was stunned, but when the stun wore off, she couldn't move. There was nothing she could do. And you're going to see me and Atticus do that repeatedly throughout the remainder of this video. It's really unfair, but you know what? Hey, use these skills to their disadvantage. As you notice, after I stun my opponents, I position myself. It's not just good enough to stun them and try and run up and hit them. Positioning yourself, using those effects, the after effects of your skills of fetch and stealth strike, using them to generate an advantage. That's what they're all about. So I strongly recommend that you play Shayne and Aurox with that kind of a mindset, and you should not be let down. You can definitely play them any way you want. It's up to you. But this play style is how I've found the most success with these two. It wasn't easy. It was very difficult and frustrating. They weren't an easy pickup for me to grab onto and get an immediate feel for. But once I found this play style and discovered this kind of method, I had a lot of fun with them. It was definitely very enjoyable. And that's going to do it for this gameplay. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, comment down below. Follow me on Twitch and Twitter. Stay tuned for more Battleborn character reviews, and I will see you guys all later in my next video. This is RadTech Shoes signing off.